Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar by Valet Wireless. Today, we are going to show you how to unlock the potential value of the Ontario Government Wireless Vendor of Record. My name is Alexa Campen, and I'm a digital marketing intern here at Valet Wireless. For some housekeeping rules, we kindly ask that you remain muted and that all questions be asked in the chat. My colleague Dana, our marketing expert, will be moderating this chat throughout the webinar, and if time allows, all questions will be answered by the end of the presentation. Now, should we run out of time, responses to unanswered questions will be sent out to everyone afterwards via email. Additionally, after the webinar today, everyone will receive a recording of this presentation, as well as a bonus document, which is a free vendor of record optimization checklist. Now, very special, leading today's presentation is the president of Valet Wireless, Gerry Skipwith, and I will pass the floor over to him.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for your time for joining us at this webinar. Today, we're going to dive into the Ontario Government Vendor of Record and the benefits that it brings to your organization. So thank you so much, Alexa, and we'll charge right in with that. A little bit of our agenda. We'll do a bit of some very quick intros on our side, just to introduce who we are and why we think we should be here speaking to this. We'll talk about the vendor of record details and what's available to you under the new contract. And then we'll dive into the potential. What does this mean to you? What could it mean to you in your organization? And then if you do choose to do that, are there any pitfalls that you want to make sure you keep an eye out on, and any best practices that you could follow? So a little about me. So thanks so much, Alexa, for the intro. Yes, I'm the president or the dealer principal of Valet Wireless. We've been in business now for a little over 5 years. My career, I had 15 years in wireless, primarily with Rogers, some time with Bell as well, and also some time running services, running IT services also. And just as a little tidbit, I do feel I've got some credibility on the vendor of record contract, and that I led the team at Rogers that won vendor of record 1.0 about 10 years ago, and it's really congratulations to Rogers. It's nice to see that they've been able to keep the winning streak going. Valet Wireless, as I'd mentioned, I'm not just the president, but I founded the business. We've been at this for 5 years, over 5 years, and we didn't do it alone. We actually partnered with a company called Compugen. Many people know them from the IT space. And really the whole notion was, let's take the infrastructure that they've built supporting desktops, laptops, all IT infrastructure, printers, and let's extend that same capability into cellular. So it meant when we started up, we didn't just have one small location. We had 9 offices, 3 warehouses, 3 config centers, a call center, and a large enterprise-grade infrastructure that we could build off of. And our whole purpose was to make wireless hands-off and worry-free for customers. What I learned in my time at both Compugen and at Rogers was that what the carriers delivered around cellular services and what customer need, there's a big gap there, and we wanted to fill that gap. So that's a little bit about us. I'll jump right into the vendor of record contract. So this is what the monthly plans look like. It's come out, and what is a big change from called Vendor of Record 1.0, or the old one, to Vendor of Record 2.0, is that they've gone to tiered pricing. So previously it was a flat fee up until you hit 6 gig, and you can see that in the chart there. Now, as you go up different tiers, the pricing changes, and you can see what that does in terms of the amount of change it does for your monthly fee. And this is on a BYOD plan, what's listed right here. If you purchase a device at one of the discounted schedules provided, you then fall into a subsidized plan. So the rates are slightly higher, but you get a discount on the device purchase. And you can still see they've got that tiered model, and there's significant changes, there's significant reductions in what you actually spend for each plan. If you dive a little deeper on these, this is what we've done. You know, the bottom line to this is that you receive significantly lower rates for your cell services. To put it into a little context, called a low user, someone that just uses their phone for basics, a bit of email, they will be less than 1 gig. The cost reduction for folks like that is 66%. So their monthly fee next month, when they go out of this contract from last month, will be 66% less. I'll jump down to the extreme user. So anyone that uses more than 6 gig, which really isn't extreme, but it's where they've drawn the threshold for unlimited in this plan, is the decrease in rates is 78%. So it's going from what turned out to be 49.75 down to 15.75. It's a huge drop. What's interesting, you can see that there's different rates, and when Rogers did this, they were very smart. They know where the profiles are. They know all the usage patterns that people follow. You can see that the least changed rate is the 6 gig plan. So basically, that's anyone from 3 to 6 gig. That is the least reduction. And it just shows how much data the Rogers has and the analysis they did, because that's actually the sweet spot. That's where most users reside. So across the broader public sector, where most users are is that 3 to gig space, which is where there is the least discount. So they're enticing us with the other tiers. They also have, and where the vendor of record contract is different than most other corporate contracts, is that you've got a fee for your plan, and then you buy the device, and there's a discount applied to that device. So you can see here on the grid that Samsung phones in the old plan were at 65%. Apple was at 65%. Those have actually been reduced. The discounts on product have dropped a little bit. It's still significant, but they've dropped. And so as I said, they've reduced discounts, but they're still significant. Getting into some of the other services like roaming also has dropped significantly. So originally in vendor of record 1.0, or the old vendor of record, for US roaming, Europe, and international, they mimicked the Roam Like Home program, where it's $12 for the US and $20 for international or Europe. What they have now, and this is the first time I've seen this, is they have dropped it. They've dropped the roaming rate, so it's $5 a day for US, 12 for Europe, and 12 for international as well. So it's come down dramatically. They've also added something new. So now there is a weekly plan. So if someone's gone for 7 days, it's a weekly flat rate, and as well a monthly flat rate. So this is new, gives a lot of flexibility. Also, for when it's needed, there is a Canada-US plan that treats basically Canada and US as a single entity. You're not roaming at that point. It's just a single add-on, and the pricing listed here would be an add-on to your whatever your plan pricing is, whichever plan you choose. So it would be added on, and then you'd be able to roam freely across North America. Key message on roaming is it's a significant savings again, and it gives you even more options. There are other features as well. These are a lot of the small features and add-ons that people might like, that can make certain roles easier, provide additional functionality. I won't list them all off, but again, you can see the majority of them have dropped quite a bit. Directory assistance has increased. Email to SMS text has increased. And then the others have all dropped. There's also a bunch of other services that they list: certified pre-owned devices, repair exchange, TEM services, enterprise mobility management. And this is just a snapshot. There's more. There's IoT services. There's quite a bit out there. And really, just the message around that is there's lots of other things that make it easier for you to add on, lots of options, lots of features. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to meet any special needs that you have. The one comment I would make on whether it's pre-owned, repair exchange, TEM service, while the vendor of record might make it easy to procure, I would suggest that if you're getting into some of those ancillary services, that you do a bit of research and just scan the market to make sure that you truly are getting the best value and getting what you really need. So that's what the plans look like. Now it's a little about what can you expect. So if you sign up for vendor of record 2.0, you're currently on vendor of record, the original 1.0, the old vendor of record, what can you expect? Well, the companies that we're working with, this is what we've seen. And so this is real data. We've gone through, done all the analysis at a line by line level. And so we've got a client with 1,100 lines, and they will see their annual spend drop by 30%. We saw another organization that had 900 lines. They were 57%. And then there was the winner thus far, the one with the largest savings. It was a very large client with 3,100 lines, and they will see a 63% reduction in their spend. So very significant, but it does prompt the question as to why. Why is there such a diversity in the amount of savings that can be seen? So we did some further analysis really to find out what are the key drivers of this, so that as you build out your plans, you can understand whether you're going to be saving 30% or 60, because that could change your timing, might change some of your decisions in terms of how much savings are you actually going to see. So why the differences? Well, the number one by far is the usage profile. As I'd mentioned earlier, the very low users have a large savings, and the high users, extreme users, they also see a big dramatic decrease in the pricing. It's that sweet spot where the majority of users are, that 3 to 6 gig. That's where there's the least change. So if your staff fall more into low users or extreme, you're going to land closer to 60% than 30 in terms of the amount of savings that you can see. So it isn't too hard to use a bit of a rule of thumb. It's going to be between 30 to 60. And if you want to figure out where you're going to land, just pull out a report, right out of whether it's Bell or TELUS, pulled out of their system, get a usage report by user, and just do a quick sort and scan, and just see, do you have a lot of users that are falling below 1 or 2? Do you have a lot that are more than 6? Where are they? And if you see any patterns there, it'll help you, as a rule of thumb, decide, the approximate savings that you could see. Another area that tend to be a bigger needle, although not as big as the usage profile, is the roaming. I just mentioned that the roaming prices had dropped at least 50%, if not more, depending on what the circumstance is. And so, US roaming is down 58%, the international is down 40%, and that's at the basic, just daily rate pricing. If you go into weekly or monthly, it's even more. Now, where this could have an impact is that what we see in customers is the roaming spend is between 2 to 18%. And that is, if you look at their total monthly spend, ranges from 2% goes towards roaming up to a high of 18%. That's what we experience. Now, in the public, that's across all of our customers. The public sector tends to be more in that 2 to 6 range. So you're just applying, perhaps a rule of thumb here. If you look at your roaming rates or your roaming percentage of your total spend, if you're coming in at about 4%, then you could safely assume you'll see a 2% savings on your annual spend. So it gives you a way to kind of figure out, what's this going to mean to you. Are there any surprises? This is any gotchas, any pitfalls that you might run into. And like all things in life, there's always a surprise or two, and the vendor of record 2.0 is no exception to that rule. So are there some surprises? The first off is you're going to have it's going to double the number of contracts that you have to manage. Traditionally, when someone upgraded their contract or renewed their contract, it would just roll. The old contract would roll into the new one. On the build date, there'd be some changes, pricing migration changes, and you had one contract last month, it gets migrated to the new contract, and you've got one contract this month. So you've just got one contract when it renews. What's different with the vendor of record 2.0 is it's entirely a new contract. It's not a renewal of the old one. So what it means is, until you migrate your lines, you're effectively canceling off your old contract, and you're migrating onto the new contract, even though you're still with Rogers. It's considered a migration. So during that migration period, you're going to double the contracts. Now, what we see, municipalities, hospitals tend to just have a single carrier. But when we get to some of the other organizations that have dispersion across the province or the country, that's when we'll see they'll have multiple carriers. So if you're currently using both Bell and Rogers, the vendor of record for both of those, and you've got 2 contracts to manage, that's now going to double to 4. So it is going to be a bit of an inconvenience. And not only that, the reporting doesn't aggregate, the invoicing doesn't aggregate, so you have double the invoices, double the reporting, double the number of activities that you'll need to do. So there is a burden that it places on you. there is something you can do with that, and that is this is kind of the corollary of the second point is, you can migrate over 2 years. So that's you'll have two contracts to manage over a 2 year period of time. The alternative to that is to incur cancellation fees. So it's no different than if you were moving from one carrier to another, where you got the cancellation fees, wrap up the old contract, and move on to the new. That's how this the vendor of record 2 contract can be looked at. So you've got a choice. Do you migrate over 2 years, manage the lines at double the contracts to deal with, or do you incur the cancellation fees and just simplify that, get it all over with right away? To give you a rule of thumb to say what that's going to cost, you can go back to Bell and Rogers, ask them for a report, and determine what your exact cancellation fees are. That could take a little bit of time. Alternatively, you can just use a rule of thumb. This is what we've seen, is if you just look at the number of lines, just use $60. That'll be on average plus or minus 25%, but it'd be about $60 a line. So if you're 1,000 lines, it'll cost you $60,000 to migrate from the old contract to the new. There's a third surprise, and this one isn't just because of vendor of record 2.0. It actually started with the first vendor of record because it was a different construct. And that is the impact, the capital impact for device purchases. But before vendor of record 1.0, when you signed up for your carrier plan, the phone came with it. That was 10 years ago. Phones were cheaper. The rates were higher. That you were probably paying in that $50 to $65 range, and the device just came with it. There might be a small fee for premium devices. So what that meant was every 3 years, there was no challenge in upgrading your device. You paid the same amount, you got a new device. With vendor of record 1.0, where you now had to start paying, even though it was a discounted amount, you had to pay every time someone upgraded. And as device prices are getting into that $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 range, even at a 50% discount, you're paying anywhere between $500 to $750 every time you want to upgrade. So with that, what we've seen is a lot of public sector organizations held off on the procurement. So their fleets are getting a little tired. We'll dive a little deeper. We also think, the COVID years, there wasn't a lot of upgrading going on during that time. That's also starting to show up now, where the lack of upgrading, or due to the circumstance, has left people with some challenges around fleet health. So I'm going to dive into that one a little bit deeper. So I think this red truck here is a perfect analogy for what we see in the Ontario broader public sector and what the fleet health looks like, that fleet health is. And that is, it's functional, it gets you from A to B, it does the job, it's looking a little tired and worn out, and maybe you're starting to worry about it being a little bit unreliable. With the companies that we've worked with, when we do an analysis of the fleet, what we're seeing is, 42 to 86% of the fleet is in its 4th year or older. And so this is going to have some impacts. It's like it's building up. You've got a big renovation that you've got to do on the house. It's coming to the point you're going to have to do it soon. And it just keeps getting bigger. The problem's even more challenging now under vendor of record 2.0, because your discount on the product has gone down. So this now, actually, our chart has gone funny here in Teams. So that is a nice pie chart. All the numbers still show, but this is actual data from one of the clients that we worked with, and they're fitting right in the middle of that range. So it just worked out to a perfect 2/3 of their fleet is 4 generations in its 4th year or older. And so they're now wrestling with this challenge of, what do we do? We've got an aging fleet. They've got very little that's current in 1 year, 33% in total, but 30% is year 2 or year 3. So they've got that challenge, and they're starting to see the impacts. So that's why they called us in. And so they are seeing increased device failures. Now, we've got some really good data around failure rates. And what we've seen in the first year, now it's hard to say whether a failure rate is because the device failed or because it's damaged. Sometimes they drop and stop working. But what we see is in the first year, the failure rate, including incidental damage, is about 2%. When you get into year 4, the failure rate is more like 12%. And that's what this company was experiencing. So they've had just a little under 1,000 devices. 2/3 of those are in their 4th year, and they were hitting about that 12% failure rate, because they were saying that they were seeing every month about 8 failures every month was what they were experiencing. And generally, they weren't prepared for that. So the challenge, although 8 doesn't sound like a lot, for it's a municipality that was doing this, what it meant to them was, they've got these failures, and it really resulted in a scrambling of the jets. Someone was out of service. They're a field worker, doing something. They need their phone to communicate. They've got to scramble the jets. They got to find a device for them. If they want to upgrade them and get them a new device from the carrier, that's about a 3-day exercise. Or they look for an old one. The person's got to come to the office. The IT person, it takes 4 hours to get everything set, get the device ready. It was described as a scrambling of the jets every time that killed half a day for both someone in IT as well as the user of the phone. So that was becoming a bigger and bigger issue as well. The battery life starts getting a little wonky, which feeds into that failure rate, and it just began, the aging fleet really has an impact on IT operations. Another one, and once you start getting into Gen 5 and Gen 6, you start to create a security liability, because coming to that point, the manufacturers start to MD the devices, but they stop the support, so there's no upgrades. So if you're on an MDM and security is important to your business, if you're getting devices into Gen 5 and Gen 6, you are injecting the risk of some security liability. There's one other problem. I call it the nagging problem, and the vendor of record 2.0 makes it worse. And this problem isn't unique to public sector organizations. It's an issue that every company struggles with, and that is unused lines. Right now, the data that we've seen is that the churn rate across Canada is about 19.2%. So every year, 20% of company staff leave, and that tends to feed the unused line challenge. And we find they're like rabbits. You have to deal with it every month, and they just keep multiplying, and it becomes a significant cost if they're not being tightly managed. And it's difficult to do when the numbers are that high. They just add up. So this organization had close to 300 lines, and they were spending about $6,000 a month on unused lines. Now, this is where vendor of record 2.0 makes that problem go away, or makes it smaller. And that is, and you recall from the schedule, at the lower end of use. So if it's unused, it's going to be lower end of use on the tiered pricing. The price is going to drop about 70%. So this $6,000 problem now is really only going to be about $1,500. So in one sense, say, well, the problem's got a lot better. Well, not entirely. Has it gotten better? And this is actually the range that we see from public sector is the best organization we've worked with had a 9% unused line rate, and the highest rate was 33%. So it can be very significant. And it's not just the line. As I said, vendor of record 2.0 is going to bring that cost down. However, it's the assets on the end of this. And when the line is unused, it gets forgotten. Those assets sit out there and they just go old. And it represents assets that aren't available to the organization to be reused. So in this organization, we pulled in, there was a large list of unused devices, and close to 300. 33% of those assets were current, that being defined as Gen 3 or newer. So they are assets that can be used. Just those current assets, the wholesale value, so if we got those back and just put them on the wholesale market, they're worth $37,000. But I think what's more important to your organization is the replacement value, because that's what you've got to work with, is that asset didn't come back, so you've got to buy another one. Just the 1/3 of these assets, the replacement value is $113,000, and that's post discount. To put it in perspective, that around the asset cost and what you're paying for asset versus the plan, in the new vendor of record, if you have an iPhone 16 that you buy and you take the 35% discount, and it's a 3 to 6 gig user, so someone falling in that just below the unlimited tier, what you pay over the 3-year term, 60% of that just goes to the device. So only 40% is the carriage, 60% is the device. And that's really the worry now. So our key message around unused lines and unused assets is managing assets is more important than ever, because it's more of what you pay. And don't be fooled or be lulled into a sense of false security, thinking that you've got less, that you pay less for unused lines, because you're losing more on the asset.
I just want to interrupt you here for one
Thank you.
second. We have a question in the chat. So the question is, which Apple devices are available for 30 to 50% discounts?
There's a schedule. I don't have the specifics. We can get that from Rogers. I didn't cover the specifics here, but the range is 30 to 50% for Apple devices. Um, I suspect the premium devices will have a higher discount, and the basic devices will be lower. So that's the indications we've been given. I don't have the exact schedule. Okay. I'm not going to go through this. I just want to share this. We have a library of best practices, and we'll speak about that at the end, make that available to you. This is the best practice slide that best practices that we've documented to help manage unused lines, that focuses on the unused line and the asset. So I won't go through it, but just want to kind of touch on that some of these challenges that we're bringing up, we've got something that we can share with you at the end that'll help you towards these, address some of these issues. We also have some creative suggestions. This is stuff actually we're working with current clients now to find a way through. So they see the vendor of record and they know that it's great value. And it is incredible value. I think it's even better than the federal government contract. Like, it's the best I've seen in Canada. And there's some, are there some creative ways that we can use this to other benefit? And so this is some stuff that we're working on, and we just wanted to share this because it's something that you could do or find a partner to do it with. And that is, some creative suggestions that might assist employee satisfaction. As I mentioned, the data we've seen is about a 20% churn rate of staff, and a lot of organizations are talking about the need to retain people. So, this might be one of those little perks that help out. And so the Ontario government, but all broader public sector, tend to have fairly restrictive personal use guidelines around cell phones. So many people will carry two devices. What we're seeing some organizations now start to open that up a little bit. And it's not about let's let people use publicly funded assets for personal use, but let's let them take advantage of the contract and allow them to do personal use, but there's a chargeback. So allow them to use their phone, allow them to use it when they're on vacation, take advantage of the lower roaming rates. I didn't cover off the long distance, but it's got sizable discounts again as well. But let people take advantage of that. And because there's no risk to on the usage side about data usage, it doesn't put them into overage. It's an unlimited plan. There's no risk on the data side. So really the only risk for people using devices for personal is just roaming a long distance. And so if you open up the capability that you can charge back or find a partner you can work with to do that, then that's something you can offer staff. And it would be a perk that has significant value. The other, because you've got anywhere from a 30 to 50% discount on devices, is allow staff to upgrade the device where they pay for the increased amount. And we're working with some organizations to do that as well. And it's a perk. And there's a side benefit. One is it's a great perk to being with the organization. It can be tied into the employment terms that says, if someone does that, they're liable for it before they depart the organization. So there's ways to manage the details of it. But the other benefit is when people own their own device or have an ownership of it and they get to keep it when the term is up, they tend to take much better care of it. So we see less breakage, less loss when someone has it's not the standard iPhone 16, but they paid a little extra, got the iPhone 16 Pro. They do tend to take better care of it. On average, we see a lower failure rate and lower loss rate when there's a personal stake in the device. And one last thing is a creative suggestion is I'd mentioned that they have certified pre-owned devices. I think their certified pre-owned it has a place and a time where it's really where it works very well. I don't think pre-owned devices are great if you're getting it for a 3-year term, for this whole issue around the fleet aging, getting a device that's 2 years old and giving that to someone for a 3-year term, it kind of just compounds that problem of an aging fleet. However, and I know we have a lot of municipalities that are under the public sector where they have seasonal staff. There's some charitable organizations like YMCA and others that do summer hiring. CPO devices are a great tool for seasonal staff. You can try to get them back. They tend to have a higher melt, or they disappear a little more. So you've got a lot less liability when you do a certified pre-owned. So that's a great place to use that. So in closing, and they say you should never, in business or in business meetings, you should never mix politics, religion, or finances. I'll throw in a little politics since we are meeting with the public sector, and that is, Valet, we're proudly Canadian and we proudly have our elbows up. That's our little paid announcement. But I want to recap the message that we've just communicated out. First off is the Ontario government vendor of record. It's of incredible value. You're going to see a 30 to 60% cost reduction. And even as critical as I like to be or try to be, I cannot find a single reason not to move as soon as you can onto this contract. You do have a decision point when you do that. And that is, do you migrate en masse and incur cancellation fees, or do you manage double the contracts, double the invoices, all that stuff, and manage the migration over 18 to 24 months and deal with migrating lines and following up the carrier to make sure all that's done. So you've got that decision whether it's worth your while or not to just do a mass migration. There is a new challenge, and this isn't just vendor of record 2.0, but I think the construct of the contract makes it a little more pressing for public sector organizations, and that is managing device costs for an aging fleet. So I'd say, have a good look at your fleet, see what the aging is, and start to think through, now that you've got to pay, even if it's a discount, but you've got to pay a substantial amount to upgrade your fleet, how do you fit that into your budget? And just as a little tip, I know where we're going with organizations is we're planning to do a lot this year. A key reason being, if you're going to see a reduction in your expense of 30 to 60%, your budget's already been fixed because of the March 31st calendar that the public sector works on. Is you're going to see some goodness this year. You're going to have some money that's coming that you're saving, but it's still in your budget. So we're seeing a lot of organizations make those plans now to do some upgrades while they've got room in the budget, and that'll just kind of soften the blow. It's not going to make the problem go away. They've got to worry about next year and the year after, but it's definitely going to give them a bit of a running start on it. And then finally, there is that nagging issue I mentioned, and this is something that's with all organizations. I do think that it's a little bit more endemic across public sector. The real key reason is because there's this belief that it doesn't cost much for an unused line. And I think people are forgetting, which is true when you just look at carriage, but when you factor in the device, there can be some substantial assets out there that are available and you're missing out on. And so just in closing, we have some tools to help. So we have, that's why I showed that one slide with the best practice around managing unused lines. We have a best practice catalog. We will make that available. Just ping me, or ping Dana. Emails are right there. If you'd like to see that, we'd be happy to send it over. And as well, in closing with this meeting, you'll see you'll receive an email back that will have the link for the video on this meeting, as well as a vendor of record migration guide, a handbook we put together about how to move from vendor of record 1.0 to vendor of record 2.0. And on that, I can close off unless there's any kind of closing questions. I'll pause for a moment just to see if there are any. And I'm not hearing anything from Alexa. She's looking content. So on that note, I'm going to close off. But I want to say thank you to everyone. Appreciate your time. And if there's anything that we can do, if you'd like to explore this further, if you'd like to investigate what we could do, how we could assist you in making wireless worry-free, by all means, please reach out and have yourself a great day. Thank you.